Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, Scott.
Hello Josh, there are some new things out there in regards to the DualSense, the PS5 controller, which was demoed very recently by Mr. Jeff Keighley himself, Mr. Video Game Awards himself, and he also, as part of his stream, his hands-on thing where he demoed Astro Boy, the various different features of the controller, had this dude on called Eric Lempel, which is a great name, or Lempel, who works for Sony, and they basically address the state of exclusives in regards to the PS5, and it kind of feels like it's very much in light of what Phil Spencer was saying last week of exclusives, console exclusives limit what gaming can be. And so Eric Lempel sort of was talking about that, and he said that a big pillar of Sony, our company, is innovation. A pillar of Sony Corporation, and it's also a pillar of the PlayStation community. And we're always trying to push the boundaries of play. We want to excite gamers and deliver new experiences. In many cases, we can't take everyone with us from previous consoles because you need new hardware and devices. Which is obviously a very factual statement, but I guess let's say, where do you come down on this? Seems to be the thing that will split the generation going forward. That idea that because Phil Spencer has kind of gone on to say things like, exclusives in a roundabout way are anti-consumer. You want to make sure that everything is available to everybody all of the time. What do you think of this being the thing that'll be like the divider going forward?
It's really difficult because you can break it down into so many different kind of facets. You know what I mean? Obviously, you have Xbox versus PlayStation versus Nintendo, and you have the different exclusives from their camps, but then you have these cross-generational exclusives between the PlayStation 4, the PlayStation 5, the Xbox One, the Xbox Series X. And I don't think there's necessarily any right or wrong answer because, from my perspective, I'm going to get a PlayStation 5 at launch. So I want there to be exclusive games for that console that justify that purchase for me, that make me excited for the future of the console, that gives me an experience that I couldn't possibly have on the PlayStation 4. But at the same time, I have to recognize that I'm in a very privileged position, especially this year, where I'll be able to afford that console and be able to afford those games at launch. You know what I mean? Whereas a lot of PlayStation players, there are 100 million people who own PlayStation 4s, for instance. There's only going to be a fraction of those who jump ship over the first few months. I think Sony are making 10 million consoles, and that's like the upper limit for what they expect over the first few months. So there's going to be a lot of players, like they kind of allude to here, that won't be coming along initially on this journey. And I think it's just difficult, man, because like I said, I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong answer, because on the one hand, like I said, you want these new experiences to show off the hardware, but at the same time, you don't want people who have invested a lot of their time, a lot of their money in your machines and in your brand and in your exclusives and in your games and franchises to feel like they're just being left in the lurch. So I think Xbox is trying this transitionary period where they're not just kind of going all in on this hard launch as is the norm, and I guess we'll see whether or not it pays off or not.
Well, the thing, it's so strange, because the more I've thought about it, last week, if you go back, those in the comments, go back and watch the video that I did with Kirsten. We talked about like the idea of it being a product, and it kind of ties in with what you said. If people are going to fork out this money to play something on launch day, you want to make sure that the consumer is satisfied. And I kind of talked about that idea of, it's just such a revolutionary way to think, and the more I've thought about it, it's are exclusives fundamentally anti-consumer, because at some point you are restricting that creation, that sort of artistic endeavor to a certain sect of people, but at the same time you are delivering a product, and you need to make sure that there's selling points, and exclusives have always been selling points of consoles. And I get that there's the offshoot of that becomes the console wars, and everyone sort of flies their flag and whatever. That stuff's fun, that you can get lost in that stuff, providing you don't take it too seriously. But at the same time, Phil Spencer isn't wrong that you are sort of restricting experiences to a wider amount of people. It's just that on the as an addendum to what he says, he's always saying, but you should play on Xbox, but you should play on Windows, but you should play on Microsoft. Yeah. And maybe they're looking into, there was a rumor a good couple of years back that Halo would potentially would be multi-platform as a way for them to recoup, because the Xbox One was so disastrously, selling the reputation of it and everything was so disastrous. But does that mean that on Microsoft's side, the Halo, Forza, Gears are all going to become multi-platform? It just seems like it's a weird thing, because I feel like he's planning for a future where there's one console manufacturer, or there's one sort of overall overarching platform where everything is available, and complete market dominance is never a good thing anyway. So it's like I sort of go back and forward on that side of it too. Also on Sony's side, I feel like they haven't really embraced their exclusive pool until now. I know that obviously the PS1, PS2 had exclusives, but the PS3 didn't have that many great things to buy it for on the exclusive side, and I feel like on this generation, the one that's closing is the one where they've finally gone, okay, here's God of War, Persona, Horizon, Spider-Man, everything. And that's a great side of Sony. Like, I like when a console has exclusives. I want to buy it for a reason and indulge in all those things that become that brand. So I'm kind of all up for them going for this. Like, if I was going to side with one or the other, I kind of side with the idea of exclusives. It's like, okay, this brand should mean something. Recruit a bunch of different developers and different brands and greenlight a bunch of ideas that the competition won't do. And competition breeds excellence, all that jazz. Like, I'm fully on. I'm not fully on, but I'm in the Sony side. Yeah,
I feel like, even Phil Spencer has to realize that the messaging he's putting out right now about this kind of like exclusives being anti-consumer or whatever is kind of going to be thrown out the window in a few years' time when there are Xbox Series X exclusives, because they've already confirmed that's happening. There are only going to be no exclusives kind of for the first few years, and then we're going to see these games that can only be played on, presumably PC and the Xbox Series X or its variations, and not be backwards compatible or forwards compatible, backwards compatible, forwards compatible, whatever for the original Xbox that's out now. So it's kind of like, it's a weird tactic to be playing, because it also, like you said, it pretends that the PlayStation and Nintendo consoles don't exist also, because presumably the games they're talking about aren't going to come to these other machines. So it's kind of only pro-consumer if you only follow one brand, you know what I mean? It's kind of like breaking this massive topic down into just a few kind of different franchises in a few different platforms, and ignoring the reality that we have all of these different warring factions vying for your attention, vying for you to get in on their kind of business and buy their products and stuff like that. And for me,
and I can see what he's like planning for in terms of it. If they can be the Steam for console gamers, then that's obviously very lucrative.
Yeah, 100%. Like, if you can pull it off, then you can pull it off and you can do something we haven't necessarily seen before. But at the same time, I think it's also kind of, I don't know, I don't want to speak for everyone in the audience, you know what I mean? But I imagine if there's a lot of people like me, you want to see kind of like the industry push forward. And that might mean you might not get the, those games for a little while. And that does suck. But ultimately, if the industry is kind of moving and it's innovating and you're getting new experiences that aren't kind of stagnating or something, that might be better in the long run. Like, for instance, I don't have the highest end TV, I don't have 8K, I don't have the highest end HDR and stuff like that, but I'm so pleased that it exists and that technology is moving forward, because I will get there one day and I will buy that TV and I'll be able to experience it. And it's not like things don't work on the platform that I currently have, like the TV I currently have. And I feel like consoles are slightly different because you do have those hard breaks, but even then I feel like even Sony is kind of hopefully trying to, I don't know, they keep saying that the PlayStation 4 isn't done. We're still going to have experiences for the PlayStation 4. And I think as long as you do, it's not all or the other. You don't just bring out a PlayStation 5 and then say, look, everything on the PlayStation 5, you can only play on the PlayStation 5. There's going to be no cross, generational things. This is a machine that only plays PlayStation 5 games. Give it the Don Matrick kind of edition. Be like, look, if you want to stick with the 360, that's fine. Just don't buy an Xbox One. That is obviously the wrong way to do it. And I feel like just kind of making this transition between generations more palpable, like, that's awesome, but that also shouldn't necessarily mean that you don't have a handful of titles that make the most of what the new machines can actually do.
Yeah, man. Well, I don't know if you remember, I don't know how old you would have been back when the transition between the original Xbox and the 360 was, but I remember that being so brazen that they were just, and it literally was just like, we're not manufacturing Xbox games anymore, everything is on Xbox 360. I remember, Marvel Ultimate Alliance and Just Cause being some of the titles that were available cross-gen, but they were some of the last ones, and then it was like, going forward, we're all in on the 360 and we're moving forward. And I mentioned this in the other video too, but even some of the Xbox's comments back at the beginning of the generation, when they were riding high on the 360's popularity, were very much like, well, we have this family of exclusives, like I said, Forza, Gears, Halo. What's Sony going to do? We're leading the market. And as things have unfolded, Sony have kind of gone, oh, okay. And then here's our army behind us, Aragorn style, with all these guys coming behind them. And then, one of the only sort of positions left for Microsoft to embrace is, oh, actually, no, everything's for everyone, and we don't care about exclusives anymore, and everything's fine, which is a great way to turn a negative into a positive, and that's some marketing 101. But at the same time, I'm so curious how that's going to shake out. I just don't think you can have a console space that doesn't have competition. And I know it's just a strange potential to go forward on. But I guess, in terms of like the Sony stuff, I guess if you were in control of like pretty much what side do you come down as a like semi-conclusive thing for now? Do you back the idea of exclusives for console stuff, or are you willing to sort of go down the agnostic side?
No, I think for now, again, I have to recognize the position I'm in where I can afford this new tech at launch and stuff. I do come down on kind of, or at least err towards Sony's side. I think that, when you have a new machine, why would people invest in it if you don't have those games at launch? You know what I mean? Because I feel like in the video game world especially, no matter whether you're buying hardware or software, I feel like early adopters and the first people to buy this, whether it's a new game or a new console, like I said, are always like the worst off. You always get the worst deal. It's always more expensive, and you always have less to actually... You always get less from it. If you're buying a £60 and $60 game on a launch, there's a good chance you're not going to get the complete version. You're going to get the buggier version, but you're going to have it, first thing. Same with the console. If you buy a console at launch, even if you go down like the Sony route, you're still only going to get a handful of proper next-gen games. And it's going to be a year or two until like the proper next-gen, Unreal Engine 5 stuff comes out. So you're already getting a raw deal. And I also, so in a way, I kind of think of it as kind of anti-consumer, that you expect people to buy this console with nothing to really get out of it to begin with. You know what I mean? Like, why would I want to spend potentially upwards of £450, £500 on a new machine when I could have just played most of these games the exact same on my PlayStation 4? That's when I would feel kind of shortchanged or hard done by. But at the same time, like I said at the beginning, it's such a nuanced decision. Even though I err on the side of Sony, I don't think Phil Spencer's in the wrong or anything by pursuing his vision. I think it's a very fascinating way to go, and it is in a lot of ways pro-consumer, and kind of hopefully might change, the way that these companies approach the install base they have, and not take them for granted in the way they did, in 2013.
Well, if you're talking about like the worth of a product and the value on the consumer side, this generation more than ever has proven that you're worse off by getting something on day one. I think we've done articles and videos and stuff on that. But yeah, you always, the console on day one is always going to be changed going forward as different technology sort of prices out and they reduce the form factor or whatever. And games are always going to be better going forward because they get patched out, or Game of the Year editions, come out or whatever. That stuff seems to always be the case in gaming, but if you remove the exclusivity side of it, the idea that you're, at least you're there at the front of the queue playing the new thing. If you remove that and you're just like, well, everything's available everywhere, and the console you already have plays the new thing, that kind of removes the point of getting the new console at all. So I think it's fascinating. There's like, I was saying the word conclusive before, but there's obviously no sort of conclusive thing for now, but it's such interesting terrain to see unfold ahead of us. And I didn't think the generation would go this way this early. I didn't think these conversations would be happening. I'm kind of fascinated by it. But let us know what you think down in the comments below. Do you support a future gaming industry that is mostly predicated on exclusives getting you in one door or another? Or should console manufacturers strive for agnosticism and the availability of games on as many platforms as possible? For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
I will catch you next time.
Bye.